Welcome to the post-game lobby for a look back at the Summoners this summer's, not the Summoners, cross-group play and what is coming up in the future. Joining me are Andrew Vedius and, of course, Splyce's jungler Trashy, player of the series Trashy.
Well deserved.
Thanks, man. So for you, looking back on the series briefly, what do you think was the breaking point for Splyce? How were you able to find that win?
I felt like the two first games were just team fights, and we played really well in the first game until we kind of got aced and they got Baron. So we realized that during the series that the way they had too many tools to just force fights, and we need to kind of play a perfect game in order to not get caught out. Like we obviously, I feel like we lost the first game rather than them winning it. But we tried to remove some of the tools they had to force the fights, and then I think we played better as a team than them today. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah, look good for you guys overall. Well, the last few weeks here in Europe have been all about cross-group play. So as it comes to a close, let's see how things have changed. We take a look at the standings back in week 3. We can see things very different than maybe we expected now. Of course, this is when G2 and Roccat were tied up. I think probably the most surprising thing. And Splyce, I would still say that the top of Group B still looked very similar and has remained very similar. And then as we start to look at week 7, things changed very quickly. What is the thing that stands out most to you guys when we look back at week 3 compared to now?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the fact that Group B has stayed the same. I was expecting a little more variance. Like, I was expecting Unicorns, or I was actually expecting H2K to be a lot more dominant than they have been, but I feel like we're still seeing a lot of the same mistakes. And I'm also quite surprised by how much Unicorns have underperformed in the last few weeks. I definitely feel like after Rift Rivals, teams are finding avenues to punish them a little bit more, and Splyce is definitely on the up and up, but I still have a few questions for Trashy regarding that.
Hit me, man.
Well, let's look at Splyce then. Let's bring up what Splyce looks like across multiple groups, and let's talk a little bit about the team. What do you feel like has been the progression, Trashy, for Splyce between regular play, cross-group play, or just over the split total?
I actually think we started out the split pretty well. But at around the time just before Rift Rivals and after Rift Rivals, we were kind of slumping, and the mood was in the house and in the team in general was not that great, and it kind of showed in our play. I think both the series against G2 and Fnatic, where we got outclassed pretty hard in my opinion. We were not playing to the level we can play at. So I mean, pretty much the only thing I can say about us is that we are on the rise, and thanks to Boris, we will get there.
All right, Pyre didn't ask. Whatever else we were planning, cut it. Who is Boris? Who is Boris? Hans wouldn't tell me.
I mean, it's not a he or she who, like, it's just Boris.
What
does Boris?
What is Boris? What does Boris mean? Can you explain Boris to me? Whatever or whoever?
I can't say more than it's just Boris. So you guys will see at the end of the split when we are gonna perform well.
Okay, let us know with your guesses. Hashtag who is Boris at LO Esports, I guess.
Is it an anagram? Is it a metaphor? It could be so many things.
Big, over-aggressive, really intense snake. That's our guess. I don't know.
But anyway, I want to bring the conversation back to Splyce.
Fair.
You said you're definitely on the up and up. But something that I feel I've noticed a lot from Splyce is, to me, you guys are pretty slow in the early game, and you are not super proactive, personally. I think that you guys are really good at punishing mistakes, and you're a really smart team, and you recognize when people are making mistakes so you can capitalize on that. But I don't think that you're the team that sets up and make the plays and suddenly makes that dramatic turnaround thing that suddenly wins you the game. Do you agree or disagree?
I would agree with it to some extent, but I also feel like today actually we showed some of the progression we have done in the past week, where we actually executed a top dive at like 4 minutes, 5 minutes that pretty much set Wonder up to carry the game. So it's definitely something we're working on, and it requires us to have better communication, and it's something that we have looked at in the past and tried to fix. And right now, I'm really happy with some of the things we did today. Obviously, we're not playing as fast as some of the other teams in the league, but we're trying to play with discipline, and we're trying to make the right decisions in the game. And I think today we obviously still saw some of the flaws in our slow play, but I also think we did some good things in the early game.
definitely have been seeing improvement. Another team that's been improving very rapidly is G2. When we look at them coming into cross group play, tied up with Rockhat, and now significant improvement post Rift Rivals. You've played up against them. I'm sure you guys get to scrim them as well. What is your impression of G2? Do they feel like a different team compared to how they were playing back at the start of the split?
I think definitely they're getting better, and it also shows. But I think the meta right now is also fitting them well, with setting up plays as a team, not as much of like solo plays all over the place with assassins or heavy carries top or something like this. So meta fits them well, and it seems like they fixed their drafting issues, and it's kind of easy to draft in this meta, in my opinion, because we pretty much know what is going to happen in the draft. So you just look who, I mean, most games are actually just decided who has the better team fight. And in some ways, it's kind of sad in a way, because you can be so, I think the game we played today, the first game, we actually played really well in the early game and macro-wise, until we did one mistake, and then we got aced, and then it's just lost. And it's kind of sad in a way, because you don't get rewarded for what the macro decisions you do in previously. If you just lose, it's kind of like the UL style, like you run it down and do one team fight, and then suddenly you're winning the game. So in some ways, it's a cool meta with a lot of fighting, but it's also not as rewarding in the early game.
Yeah, and it's something it seems like you mentioned has helped G2 to a certain degree. I want to turn our attention to Unicorns of Love, though, on the other side. They have a little bit of a different approach to the meta from what we've seen so far. Now, the talent coming out, a little more emphasis on some lethality carries. Things have not looked, despite the records still looking pretty good for Unicorns of Love, I feel like we are starting to see a bit of a downturn for this team.
And this surprises me, because their strength for the longest time has been what this meta is. And if anything, you would expect them to thrive in this meta. We've seen yesterday in a lot of the team fights versus Fnatic that they are still really good at actually team fighting, and they can just draft comps around trying to do that, but we're actually seeing them make a shift away from that. We're seeing them adapt. We're seeing them trying new things, and I don't know if this is a point in the meta in which you need to be experimenting. Like, Trashy, you can probably speak more to this. Like, when you're deciding when you want to introduce new styles into your play, whether you want to try new champions, when do you think is the best time to do it? And is it at all, when is it appropriate?
Well, it depends what team it is. Like, I bet UL would just be like, yeah, let's play this champ, and then next game they're playing it. So it depends on the teams, and I think a lot of the champions, they have chosen like the Talon and stuff like this. I personally, I'm not a big fan, because the tanks kind of shut it down. Like, you hit one CC on a Talon, and then it's kind of like, what is the Talon gonna do? So I think they just need to figure out what they want to do. And the biggest problem when I look at UL is their mid lane champion pool, and I think they need to change it a bit if they want to get to the top of Group B.
But also, I look at Xerxes as well, because he's been pretty vocal about how he feels it's difficult for him to have that early level of impact that he says he wants to have, but can't, because of he has struggling solo laners. Trashy has had a tendency to randomly die in the 1v1, and in the middle lane, Exile is now renowned for that trait. And even though yesterday both Trashy and Exile were performing extremely well, he still didn't have that same level of early success that he talks so much about. So I'm following closely as to whether or not he can improve upon that, or whether or not they will just revert back to a style which we've seen so many teams have success with, which is just fight, fight, fight.
Yeah,
I think it's a very interesting topic, because when Xerxes just came into the league, he was pretty much playing only for himself in a way. Like, he was playing super selfish with his pathing, didn't really help lanes to get a push out or get ambition and stuff like this. And he was actually performing super well in these situations, where he would just at some point take over games with huge farm leads and level leads. But now, since they've changed a bit and tried to help lanes more, he also seems like he's not performing as well. So it's that like rookie stages that, like, for a player like me who has played for a couple of years, I've been through all those phases where you learn. Sometimes you learn to be more selfish, and sometimes you learn that you need to help your teammates more in specific situations. And it's so situational that it's kind of, you need to learn by doing, in a way. So I'm excited to see where they take it. I think right now they're not looking as good as us and H2K. So it's kind of funny because none of us wanna get that third place spot to meet G2 in potential quarterfinals, which it looks like right now. So there's gonna be a lot of fight in Group B in the last week.
Definitely is the case. Well, we'll see what changes and what the next weeks will bring as we head back into intragroup play. Based on what the teams have shown so far, we have a pretty explosive few weeks ahead of us, and I mean, I honestly just don't know what to see here. This is going to be such an exciting thing to watch. All right, well, now we can talk about my favorite thing in the entire world. This is my take on patch 7.14. I've been prepping this all day. I did hard research. I watched every game back. And I have hard. It took me at least 5 minutes to think of.
Can you say it again?
This is my take on patch 7.14.
I want you to more referring to the word.
Research. Anyway, I have 3 easy steps for you, gentlemen. 1, draft more engaged than your opponent. 2, engage before your opponent. And 3, murder your opponent. Trashy, as someone who's played on 7.14, how accurate is my interpretation of patch 7.14? What is there something I'm missing here? Is it more complicated than this?
I feel like it's pretty spot on, honestly. I can definitely see the research and the 3 easy steps.
And so I'm curious, like, I made this half jokingly, but really when we look at these games, I feel like a lot of these games, as you mentioned, have been decided in the draft. Who has the better team fighting composition? I mean, it's a little bit comedic, but I also feel like there's a certain degree of truth. But I mean, is it as simple as drafting more engaged than your opponent and just forcing fights?
To some extent, I would agree with it. But on the other hand, I also feel like, for example, us today, when the enemy team had more engaged tools than us, we were like we would get caught for no reason. Where if you don't play with discipline and actually play on the waves and look out for them when they're looking to group and catch you, then obviously it's gonna look bad, and then the team with the engaged tools are gonna look better. So I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, you just follow these steps and then you win the game. But to some extent, it looks like that is kind of the way to play the game right now.
One of the things that I'm a little disappointed about from Trashy is, you draft more engaged than your opponent. And today, he admitted that game 1, it was a little rough. They adapted it later on to the series. And when I look at this engage before your opponent, there were a couple of champions that we were talking about earlier before the show, Trashy, because Trashy, he came to me and he said, look, Vedius, I trust your analytical insight.
Here, for the record. This is true. It's a true story.
I'd really love to know what you think is really strong in the jungle. And I was like, have you looked at North America? Because those junglers, they're really good, right?
They're so good. They proved that they're superior.
So I was like, maybe you should try Kayn out. Like, get Kayn in the jungle, go top lane, get a Maokai. That great setup, right? You have a tank top, you have an aggressive jungle. Or over in Korea, they've got a Skarner. If you want engage, you want tools to fight, he's right there, man. Great clear speed. He's got everything you could want. And I was talking to him. I said this, right? I was like, Kayn Skarner.
Come on, where's this
I think that's what you could go with. And you went 3 games at Sejuani, Trashy.
But that's engaged too, no?
I mean, it is, but you could miss. And you did miss a few.
I didn't.
It's really hard to flash away from that Skarner dagger thing.
The biggest problem we run into is if I'm supposed to play Kayn, then my top laner is supposed to play Maokai.
He is.
And
yeah,
that's
I think
kind of
I think historically, when we look at Splyce, I think team has definitely looked a lot better when you're playing the tank and Wonder's playing the carry.
I mean,
why is that? Why is that? Is that just Wonder better mechanically?
Usually, I'm just taking the bitch role, so that's not,
yeah, playing the back seat there. Maybe don't get to be the, but you get to force the engages. Isn't that your thing?
You won player of the series.
I mean, yeah, to some extent, I actually really like playing tank, so I don't mind it. And Wanda likes to do damage, so he's damage camps.
Notice, yes.
And then suddenly it just makes sense. So yeah,
it definitely clicks in. Are you at all worried about this meta for him? You guys did find success to a certain degree with the Camille in the top lane today. Are you worried that if he is still playing all these split pushers and every other team is finding success with tanks, that it's not going to work out for you guys?
Not at all, actually. I think right now we are implementing some stuff in our play where it actually doesn't matter if Wonder is playing a carry or a tank, because we can set him up for success, or we can set other people up for success and win the game of this. So I'm actually really excited for how we are gonna progress in the next couple of weeks.
I'm excited to see it too. Now it feels like you guys were the first team to really find success on something that wasn't, and I could be wrong, of course, there's a lot of games this week, but that wasn't just jammed the game full of tanks, right? You had a Camille on the top side. You had a Kog'Maw, which is not a pick that we saw a lot, and definitely not a pick that we saw be successful. How did you guys find success in Misfits in that first third game to shut down like a lot of these more engage heavy picks like the Callista, like the Fly that is actively hitting me in the face?
We took kind of a gamble in the draft by giving up Cho'Gath, which I wouldn't recommend against any team. But I felt like Kog'Maw is an answer to Kog'Maw because you're stacking so much HP on the Kog'Maw, so like Kog'Maw can just shred the HP, so it makes sense in that way. And we had a plan and we followed the plan, and that's what matters.
But I also want to emphasize how good they actually were able to collapse on a lot of those fights, because many people may not remember how close the Game 1 series between G2 and Splyce was. They weren't properly able to play the 1-3-1 because you guys had that Jax then, and every time that Jax was being dragged into all those team fights. And when you have a Jax in team fight, it's not quite as optimal. But this time when you have a Camille, you actually have a few more options. And the pathing that Wunder often took was always getting on top of Handsummer. His impact in those fights was so minimal, and it just came from a lot of good, I felt, coordination and just communication when setting up those.
But correct me if I'm wrong here, a lot of that also, Wunder was hilariously far ahead in a lot of the mid to late game team fights. So I'm wondering how much of this ability to execute a comp comes from building an early game lead for your side lanes and setting a pick like Camille up to just dominate.
I mean, obviously, when in this kind of draft, we were kind of just saying to our bot lane, try to survive, you know. We're playing on the other side of the map, just stay in the game. And we executed a play top, and even though they were making the first play top, Wunder survived it, and that was all we needed in order for us to regain the pressure in the game. And then obviously, if you play a champ like Camille, you don't really want to fall behind on Camille, because then the other team can kind of roll over you in team fights. So it's pretty much just playing to your condition of winning, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, and today it worked.
Yeah, definitely looks like it worked out for you. Well, let's look forward next week. The teams get back in their groups, starting with Mysterious Monkeys versus Vitality. And as we look at the schedule, what matches are you most excited for, Trashy, as a player? Are you at all, how do you feel about this H2K matchup as the first match back in regular group play?
I think it's going to be exciting, close. Out of the teams of Group B, I think we and H2K are looking the strongest right now. So I want to see how we mesh up against them. Usually we have a tendency of losing to them, so I kind of want to change that and see if we can beat them. The group is so close that actually the team that can get the first place and go straight to semis are looking really good in going to potential worlds. So it's the last couple of weeks here are going to be very intense for Group B, and I just hope we can get on top of the group.
I think that Friday will be a very big day for a lot of teams, because bear in mind that Misfits are actually now closer to Roccat than they think because of the Splyce win today, which means that given Rockat's schedule, they could start getting themselves wins and start challenging Misfits for that third place, very similar to last split. But also, Splyce versus H2K, you're looking at who could actually make away from that third place spot, and you're really looking fairly safe in the second and first.
Yeah, and it's a very close battle. You guys all have the same score. Of course, match differential plays into it interestingly, but if you can just get a series win over the opposition, you can not lock first at this point, but hold it for now.
Yeah, that's kind of our problem. Like we have not as many pluses on the winning side, so we need to be able to beat these teams.
Yeah, definitely feels like a rough situation if it does come down to those tiebreakers. I'm curious, when we look back at the schedule, playing against H2K, as you said, you guys are improving week to week and things are getting better. Would you have rather faced H2K closer to the end of the split, or do you feel like now is a good time? They did kind of just come off of a hard loss versus G2.
Honestly, I don't mind. Right now, we are playing at a level where we can beat them, so I don't mind.
I like the confidence. It's going to mean an exciting Saturday next week.
All right, Trashy, it's going to be 2-0 or 2-1. How confident are you?
Ooh, I hope 2-1, then it's going to be exciting.
All right, are you going to take the same, are you going to give him Cho'Gath? That's the other question. You gave...
Well, I mean, if you play Cho'Gath like Maxlaw, then sure, you can give it.
All right, on that note, that was all from us here in Berlin. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We're going to be back on Thursday for Week 8 of the Summer Split. Thanks again for joining us, and have a wonderful Sunday evening.
Sorry, Maxlaw.
It is the last game of cross-group play here in the European LCS. Misfits Gaming taking on Splyce.
Like, the Fisher is always talking about this farm, tank meta, 5-man mid, you know. He just wants to be a part of it.
What's Mickey saying? This is literally the worst Gragas ever.
And here comes Trashy, gonna jump over the wall. The flail goes out. Baby cage put down, as does the Cataclysm, and first blood secured by Splyce.
Okay, nice. I'm gonna boost.
Runaways. Exactly what Splyce do not want. The power of evil shockwave catches 3.
I got it.
And Misfits right back in it. That's a triple for power.
Come here.
And Misfits crush Splyce in game 1.
Yeah, we're gonna win mid game for sure. Like Baron, 20 minutes.
Yeah, really good engage.
Hashtag hype.
He's gonna get threatened.
There's a tower dive available. Rocket jump not gonna be enough. Krabby is available for first blood. Hans Sommer.
It's no flash.
Look, Tristana.
No, it's Syndra. Nice.
This could be the fight for Misfits. Hans Sommer's looking for the cleanup. Trashy goes down. Wonder's the next target. Misfits will ace Splyce.
Oh, Drakos! One more.
Can they get
There?
there?
Target. Buster shot comes out. Kobe's caught up. Senkax gets the stun.
They gotta get Senkax.
Needs a few afterwards.
They got it.
Down and going to game 3.
Kalista no flash.
Yeah,
Kill Kalista. Kill front. I stun.
Nice.
One more. Talia no flash. Okay.
There's someone out here. Good job, guys.
Nice.
Everybody gets a kill. Wonder's able to walk out of everything. No damage lands. Senkax flashes over the wall. It's a clean ace. In one of the most dominant game 3s, Splyce take down Misfits to close out the cross group lane.